is 4 o'clock. So it's 4 o'clock on July 22nd, 2020. We'll open the meeting. Darren just gave us the list of attendees, including all of the board members, with the exception of Mr. Lesher. We have the mayor here, and Darren, and our solicitor, Mike Hoffman. Are there any revisions or deletions to the agenda?
No.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'd like to have the white report pulled.
Okay, excuse me, say that again, Tom.
I said I'd like to have the White Marsh report pulled, so we have some questions.
Okay. Anything else?
I also would like to have the minutes of the June 24th pulled, and I'd also like to place a matter before the board for discussion at a later date.
Okay, all right. Do I have a motion to accept the remainder of the consent agenda?
Moved.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We want to do the minutes first?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I think there's a point that needs to be clarified. The minutes of June 24th on page 3 under old business, item 7, the second paragraph. I think the second sentence in that paragraph is confusing and really requires some elaboration or restatement. The sentence reads, the BPW would also be responsible for any charges, including with the charter change. And I think this was in the context of discussing if we were to have our charter explicitly state that the BPW had sue or be sued authority, then any cost associated with those expenses would be paid by the BPW. And I may be wrong, but I think that was the intent. And if so, I think it needs to be clarified.
I think you're right.
Yeah, you're right. That is the intent.
Okay. So we'll change the minutes to say that. Anything else, Robert?
But not on that point.
Okay. Mike, did you say something?
Yes, Mr. President. I also on the minutes, I neglected to forward this over earlier, and I apologize. But on page 4, the full paragraph, the last sentence, it says, Mr. Hoffman also informed Mr. Mandalis. That
Yeah.
should be Mr. McGonigal.
Right.
Counsel for the city on that issue was Tom McGonigal.
Okay. You're correct. Okay. Anything else with the minutes? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Tom? Tom, what did you have?
Several questions on the White Marsh report.
Okay.
My notes here. So the first one is a general operations question. When I was out at the plant on the 14th, there were 3 drying beds that were empty, and yet it appeared that we were still hauling liquid sludge. And I was wondering what the reason for hauling liquid sludge when we had drying beds was, and because it does cost considerably more.
Yes, this is Paul with White Marsh, Mr. Panetta. In between times, and it's not every time, we have to let the bed completely dry. It's a porous surface, and we have to brush it with the brush to make sure we keep those pores clean so that the sludge dewaters completely. So there can be times when you would make a visit and you could see an empty bed. We are getting the beds poured at a minimum of twice a month. It anywhere from 12 to 14 days in between times where they can actually be cleaned. But that's the reason why you saw some empty beds.
Because it seemed like there was in this report a lot of liquid sludge hauling, and I wonder if that's the most effective way. second question, Darren answered. Um, 1 second, let me go down.
Tom, before you leave that point, I just had a general question as well. Over this time period, they hauled about 90,000 gallons of sludge in addition to those 3 tractor loads. And I was just wondering, is that an unusual amount? And if so, what would be the cause for that?
No, sir, it's not an unusual amount. On a daily basis, each train will waste from 7 to 10,000 gallons of sludge, higher influent, higher sludge volumes. We are mandated by design to keep our mixed liquors at least 11,500, lower if possible. And we are endeavoring to maintain that. That's the reason it looks like we're hauling a lot more sludge, but you know, hot weather, time of year, and our flows, we had a peak day with over 1 million gallons of influent. And that's, looks like, you know, we had a little over 28 million total for the month of June.
Thank you.
In order to keep the mixed liquors where we need to be, we're wasting about 300,000 gallons a month. Drying as much as possible, obviously. Hauling liquid where we can't to keep our numbers right. But we are working with Mr. Gordon, looking at some other avenues to try to get the liquid sludge hauling down to a minimum. But we are researching other avenues.
Thank you.
Anything else, Tom?
That was all on the first report on the attachments.
Uh-huh.
On sheet page 6, which is the TMP after back pulse versus time, the notation there that shows 2 blips and it says timing of readings. I was wondering if you could explain a little bit of what that's about.
Where are you, Tom?
It's page 6 of the White Marsh attachments.
Okay.
Is the graph titled permeability after back pulse?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So when the operator takes a reading, he goes in and takes the reading. When he writes it off the board, or I'm sorry, off the HMI screen, it's just a tiny snapshot in time. So the reading that we're graphing off of is just 1 point in a 24-hour period. So the graph can show a little spike like that, but if we had a minute-to-minute trend, it wouldn't look that way. The insight, excuse me, the insight data that will be to use from Suez, I know that they are communicating now, Suez and the PLC at the plant. We're still working on the access for White Marsh to the cloud server, but that is being worked out. I believe Josh Gritton's working on that with the Suez guys. So our charts are not going to be they're going to have spikes in them where you won't see that when you start seeing reports from the Suez Insight software. And I believe from my conversation with Darren that Suez will shortly be presenting some reports.
The next one, Darren, this is probably an ideal time for you to talk about. It's page 16 of the attachment. It's the root cause analysis corrective actions. It's item 7, perform an engineering analysis of the plant. I wonder if you could provide an update of where we are with that.
The update of that is that I have contracted with Charlie O'Donnell of GMB and Chris Derbyshire. They're both on. They'll be talking to us later with the bid award. They are moving forward at going in, taking a look at the plant, and finding out what kind of redundancies we could create, build, so that we can have a safer run plant, so we can avoid any spills in the future. So they've been given that contract. They're moving forward with it. It's their own kind of timing, etc. But they are moving on, getting us that information.
And do
And
we
it
have an
probably-
expected, when we'll have the engineering study done?
Let me ask Charlie here. Charlie, you're jumping in. You got to unmute.
Gotcha. Our contract reads we'd have the study done 8 weeks from July 7th.
Okay. So in September timeframe, we'll have something to discuss relative to the plant.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Russ, I've got a couple of points if Tom's finished.
Just a couple more, Robert, and I'll turn it over to you. There are several items in the safety report, which as of my visit on the 14th were not completed. One of them was the permanent lifeline was purchased. It had an estimated completion date of June 30th. I was wondering if White Marsh could provide an update on that. And
Yes, sir. We had a scheduling issue with the vendor McDonald's Safety. One of the items that we needed for the installation did not come with the package. So we've rescheduled that. We expect that to be done by the end of next week.
And the new lifeline, will it address the safety issues relative to visibility, potential for walking into it, those type of items?
Yes, sir.
All right, so we can expect that that'll be completed by the next report.
That is correct.
And then just as a general statement, the housekeeping condition of the plant is better. However, there were still numerous examples of things that need improvement, ranging from equipment, tooling lying around, 2 gates were open. There was an item on the pressure gauge sitting on the staircase going up to the UV light, which could have been a tripping hazard on the way down. So I think you need to just pay a little more attention to the housekeeping out at the plant.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Panetta. We are endeavoring to do better. Thank you.
That's all I had, Robert.
Okay, I just have a couple of points I'd like to go over. This one's been addressed. I just want to make sure I'm clear on it regarding the Insight status. From the time of this report, which was the June report, it's my understanding that Insight software is capturing data. They are sharing that data with Suez, and it's also, I believe, available on display within the plant. But the problem that remains is the connecting the SCADA and the upgraded SCADA to the office within the wastewater treatment plant. But the data is being collected and shared. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay, excellent. And this is a minor point. The root cause analysis report is dated May 2020. This does contain June data, correct?
Yes, sir, it does. I apologize. I did not change that.
Yeah, not a problem. And also, I just want to say thank you for adding the high-low bands on the charts. It makes it easier for me to see at a glance and interpret that data. And in most respects, it seems like we're operating in the band of excellence. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Is that it, Robert?
Yes, sir.
I was going to mention this in the next item under my report, but Darren and I received an email about some odor problems out at the plant from somebody that lives on Savannah Road there. And I've been in touch with her and a couple of the neighbors since then. Darren's jumped on it with both feet and has some ideas about the cause. And I think, Darren, why don't you go through that a little bit about what you discovered and what we're doing about it.
Well, what we've discovered, so there's a couple of things. What the complaint was odor. And so people that live around the treatment plant, even further away, there's times when they have odor and we've got to kind of figure out exactly where it's coming from. So we've done a couple of things. There's the biggest case for odor is possibly the drying beds and the filters just prior to the drying beds, the solids handling process. And in that process, there's aeration that goes on. And sometimes it can, Paul, you get to jump in here too. It will cycle. It can go on for 6 minutes of aeration, off for 4. And that's an energy saving thing. I've asked them that they can keep that on 24/7, that solids will be aerated constantly so that they can't become septic and thus giving off the smell of H2S and methane, which is nasty smelling and smells like the swamp or the marsh. And so we're going to make sure that the solids handling process is as clean and as odor-free as possible. The other thing that's happened is Paul and his team we've gotten some odor control chemicals that are being applied to that area and any other areas that might have odor producing possibilities. The other thing that we learned from the people that have been complaining is that they've said they've seen haulers, dumpers coming in using the manhole on American Legion Way, and I believe some over by Savannah Road. Press, you can correct me if that's wrong.
I think it was all American Legion Road as far as I know, Darren.
Okay, but I've talked to the police. That is illegal. If anybody sees somebody parked over by on top of a manhole and they're discharging their camper, trailer, RV, or dumper truck into that, that's illegal. We don't have people do that. And we want that to be stopped immediately. That is theft, that is environmental hazard. And so we've been told that has been happening. I've alerted Chief Spell. Chief Spell has told his folks and they'll keep an eye out. And so I would simply ask the public, if they have eyes out there, be aware of that. If they see it, please report it.
Darren, I had communications with her today, the gal that first reported the odors. And she said that, and someone else had alluded to this in the neighborhood too, that the fellow in the corner there of American Legion in Savannah actually had photographs of the vehicle. And she informed me today that his name is Doug, had given them to the chief. So you may want to check with him and see if they show anything and it's any value to us too.
That's
The other
fantastic.
possibility is what about putting a camera out there?
We could do that. We could go get a Hunter's motion detector camera and put it out there. We'll get lots of bikers and maybe we'll get a dumper or two. So we'll see.
Well, they seem to be doing it, according to them, in the middle of the night. So hopefully wouldn't be too many bikers, but you might find a deer or two.
I would sure like to have, if the citizens are aware of it, I think they'll do a great job of letting us know.
Yeah,
But,
if we need to, we can do that, yeah.
The final action I want to do is that so when we had calls about odor, I went immediately down to the wastewater treatment plant, and the plant itself is running its process. Yes, there's some areas that have some odor, but none that I would consider setting off the alarms. Happened over the weekend. I went down again on the Monday. Again, all processes were working. When you get any calls, you as the board, of complaints of odor, I'm asking you to please let me know, and I will come immediately, and I will go immediately to the plant, because we need to find out where it's coming from. And not just a generalized area, but if there's places in the plant where it's going septic, Paul can chime in here, you don't want that happening. if it's going septic, it took time to get there, and it's going to take time to come out of there. And so there's something bigger going on if that's where that odor is coming from. We've got we do have a marsh around there. I would say that there's a possibility that there might be some smell coming off the marsh, especially at this time of the year. But I want to be able to investigate that. So I would ask that of you. If you start to smell those odors any time of the day, like even in the evenings, nights, I'll come, and we want to go look and see what's causing it, pinpoint it so that we can attack it.
Darren, I gave her my phone and she had my email, and I told her to pass them around. And if anybody notices it, to contact me. So it'll come to me or you, I guess. So I'll pass it on to you if I receive any.
Thank you very much.
All right, anything else on that?
This is the general manager's report.
No, I think it's my report.
Well, before we get to that, I had one more item that I would like to put on a future agenda and let everyone think about it between now and then.
Okay.
And really what I would like to have we consider is whether we need a report and a discussion on whether or not our current rates are producing the needed revenues to keep us operating in the black, which we currently are, but in light of our increasing expenses and the capital plan that we have over the next 5 years. And I'm not really asking that we do a cost of service study right now, but merely to take a look at our rates and see, are we producing the revenues that we thought we were going to be producing over time. And maybe Dawn Lund from UFS, who did the cost of service study, could give us a quick review of what those rates are currently producing in light of our capital budget.
It's been what? Has it been 3 or 4 years since we've had our rate study done?
4 years ago, and it's been in place for 3. And it's not unusual to have cost of service studies performed within a 3 to 5 year period.
Right.
So I don't know that we're there yet, but we still are operating in the black. And I think it'd be good, at least from time to time, to see what those rates are producing in terms of where we wanted them to be.
I agree.
That's a good point, and because she gets around all over the place, she might have some ideas about what's happening, like due to the pandemic, and if it in particular is causing any aberrations in the normal rate study.
Okay, we'll put that on the agenda then. Dan, would you put that on the agenda for August?
Yes.
Thank you, Robert. Anything else? If not, item 5, the president's report. I want to read a letter from Jack Fletcher. It's dated today. Dear Mr. President and BPW members, there's a right time in life to make every decision that appears before us. The key is to recognize when the time is right. I've had the pleasure of serving 10 years as a treasurer of this unique and wonderful enterprise that operates utilities of the beautiful city of Lewis. However, I now recognize the right time has arrived for me to step aside and make room for new and young ideas. Therefore, it is with much love and appreciation for the BPW staff that effective July 22nd, 2020, I will be resigning as treasurer of the BPW. The time has come for me to sit on the sidelines and support the BPW staff in every way possible. In the meantime, heartfelt thank you to everyone. It's been one of my greatest pleasures to have served you. I wish you Godspeed. Sincerely, Jack R. Lesher. So Jack has resigned, and we're going to miss him. He's done a yeoman's job here. His talents that he's brought to this have been much needed and well used. So we have to think going forward for maybe next month's meeting, we'll recognize him officially. That being said, the charter, the BPW charter, specifies that the president shall appoint a replacement, and that the mayor and city council will review it and consider it for approval. So I'd like to appoint Earl Webb of Lewis to the board. Earl is a very accomplished young man, and at least for my decade, he's a young man, and very accomplished. He's been in business with, I think, AT&T and Lucent Technologies, which is part of that. And I think more recently with General Electric and the General Electric financial group. So he's retired now, and I've mentioned it to him, and he's very excited about the opportunity. So with that, I'd like to notify the mayor of this and ask him to move forward with the review of Earl's nomination.
Thank you. And again, please pass along our best wishes to Jack, and I will in person. We will take this up at our August meeting for consideration. I think most members of council will recognize Mr. Webb. If you have a resume that you could share with us for him, I think it would be helpful for everyone's edification.
Yes, he's preparing one. I've seen a draft of it, so we'll have that to you shortly.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Mr. Webb would serve the unexpired term of Jack, correct?
Right.
That's correct. And then he'd be up for election next May.
Correct.
This is it's really a very short interim appointment.
A 10-month appointment, I guess.
Yeah, maybe actually, but something like that. Yeah.
Closer to 9, probably.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. All right. I have nothing else. Item 6, receive the general manager's report. Mr. Gordon.
I have just a couple items to go over fairly quickly. One, I've had the question of what has the COVID done with us? What's been its effect on the BPW? Two answers to that. We've gone back 4 years to look at the water consumption upon water revenues, upon electric consumption and electric revenues. And the only thing that's sort of an anomaly is that in the month of June, the actual electric consumption was the lowest of the 4. Every other section, it's right in the average. So, and so far as financially, we're also staying right on the average of what we've done. Very consistent. I believe that has to do with the fact that we really are a residential at our community. Who we serve, the majority is residential services. And so that has held firm. The one thing that has gone away is that as a utility, we were not able to charge late fees, which has been great. We're okay with doing that. The average monthly late fee collection that we do is at $6,987.50. So it's right at the $7,000 a month. That's amount of revenue. We're okay that we're okay to donate that to the cause. And so at this point in time, very quickly, the amount of COVID effect on the BPW is very limited. We've also had our employees, none of them have come down positive with it. All of them have been able to work. All of the protocol that we put into place, specifically splitting up crews, especially in our water and wastewater, kept them safe and helped us prevent. If one of those group had gotten sick, both of that team would have been quarantined. Haven't had to do that. They've been able to move forward very, very well and make that happen. So the effects of that on us has been minimized. We've also been going back and looking at those folks that have late payments, no penalties, and we're also not doing any shutoffs, and that's per the state mandate. The state has said that we're going to do this and we'll not charge anything until September. But what we're looking at is we've gone back and called people, spoken to people, set up payment plans where necessary. People have been very appreciative. And so that's been absolutely minimized. The late, come July, with this heat wave that's come through, at this point in time, we've seen some significant spikes in the consumption in electric, but also in water. I pulled Paul out of the attendees list, but I had talked with him a little bit about our water, their water, and they've also seen an increase somewhat from the COVID of about 20% of their water usage being Tide water. We're seeing right now that happen. Over the 4th of July weekend, we produced and delivered 8 million gallons of water, which is that's our peak for the year, definitely. So that's my report, unless there's other questions.
Darren, I guess one question that comes to mind is, why we haven't seen any change or material change for electric and up until now. I know the school system hasn't decided what they're doing yet, but how much of an impact would the school closures be on our total year? Because they are one of our large customers.
One of the things that we find with the schools is that even though there's nobody in them, they're still keeping them up and running. And so our loads on the electric side haven't been horribly diminished, which is kind of interesting. The water has come down on that. They don't use the water quite as much, but most of their water usage is on fields, et cetera. And so it's, I don't know that we've seen the true effect of what that would be. So it's something to definitely look at. Our biggest electric user is the hospital, and then SPI Pharma, and then comes the school district. And so we would definitely have to take a look. One of the things that I want to say we do right is that we have our ready to serve charges, which are really taking care of our fixed costs, while our consumption charges take care of our commodity. So the number of kilowatts, the number of gallons that we serve, the amount that we rely upon those sales is minimized because we emphasize the fixed cost. And because of that, we've got ourselves in a very good position as we go forward, that we've been able to handle this very well. Our seasonality has really played into it, be a benefit of how our rates are set here.
Okay, thank you.
Darren, could you continue that throughout this COVID period each month so we could monitor that as a board?
Sure.
Thank you. Anything else, Darren?
No.
That moves us into old business. Item 7, open forum general discussion to accept the Admiral's Chase water system and beginning of the 1-year warranty period. Mr. Gordon.
President Lee, members of the board, the Admiral's Chase development is located on Gills Neck Road. As you come all the way around, it's on the sort of in between Wolf Run, Wolf Point, and Schofield. It's approximately 28 lots. We are providing them water. That water system has been installed. We have had it inspected. Thank you to GMB. The escrows have been paid up to part, and we have done a walkthrough. And I am giving you my opinion that it is time to give the general acceptance of it, which will begin the 1-year warranty. If anything breaks, if anything goes bad in it, Admiral's Chase is still responsible for fixing it. At the end of that, it becomes ours in its entirety. And it's my recommendation that we accept it. Give me 30 seconds to invite Charlie in and see if he has anything that he would like to add. Charlie, you're on mute.
Hey, Darren.
Hey, do you have anything to add to that?
President Lee, Board of Public Works. No, just the punch list was developed at the walkthrough. They completed everything on the punch list. They've submitted as-built drawings. And they've submitted all the release of liens from their subcontractors. So we're in good shape.
All right, so you're looking for a motion to accept that?
Mr. President,
Yes,
I
please.
just have one question if I can. Just
Yes,
Darren or Charlie, can you verify that all fees have been paid?
I believe that when I checked last, they had.
Thank you.
Make a motion to accept the Admiral's Chase into our system.
Have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Item 8, open forum general discussion to accept a 5-year capital budget 2020 to 2021 to 2024, 2025. Mr. Gordon.
President Lee and members of the board, we have we presented this in its detail last month. Of that detail, everything has stayed the same except for 2 items. We are still, so I'm going to go through it quickly. On the water, a 10-year plan where we are looking at removing as much old iron pipe from the main backbone rib of our system, along with taking and pulling those items that might have let out, and new hydrants and other items, is a $10,319,000 for a 5-year period. In our water production, we're looking at a well development, a water tank, and other items, $2.835 million. In the sewer department, this is our district, this is our collection system. This is lateral lines and sewer mains rehabbed in Cedar, rehabbed in Pilot Town Road, other lift station issues. That total is $2.97 million. Next is the wastewater treatment plant. 2 items in here that I need to change. Number 1, the drying bed expansion. That number that I had in there was for $430,000. I'm gonna have to increase that by $150,000, and we will get to that bid document a couple of items later. That was a bid that came in at $503,100. The other item that you have in front of you that is in a gray line, gray bar, shows the redundancy / root cause. We know that we talked about this just earlier with Charlie O'Donnell, GMB, Chris Derbyshire. They're going to be looking at the wastewater treatment plant to see what we need to do so that we can improve the redundancy there. I've got $20,000 in there to look at engineering, and then a placeholder of $215,000. I'm afraid that that's a very low number, but I want you to know it's a placeholder. We recognize and know that some money is going to have to be put there. So I would ask you to keep that in mind. Other than that, we go to stormwater. We have in the future, 3-4 years out, if and when it hits us, MS4. Those numbers are very fluid, but I have them in the budget. Phragmites control, catch basin renewal, pipe replacements, a total in there of $1.197 million. In the electric, we have underground utilities we're going to be renewing. We also have in it the biggest item that I would say is the AMI installation. That's 2 years out. Total for electric, $5,185,000. And then in support, we have computer replacement, electric vehicle, GIS mapping, website, a total of $425,000. The total budget, capital budget I'm requesting for a 5-year is $24,965,827. And I would ask for your approval at this time, so especially we can move forward on the items for this year.
Darren, I think it might be good to clarify at this point about the $2 million for the property, the Jones Farm, that's not in this budget.
What we're looking at doing is getting a loan for that from the state SRF. So that's not out of this.
We'll pay that over many years rather than putting a lump sum at the head of this budget. And that was a suggestion in talking with Jack Lesher before he retired today. That was one of the suggestions that he pushed for this type of purchase of property. It's good to do it over time, particularly at the rates that will be charged.
And I would add to that, that just like Robert said, we need to have Don Lund or UFS, an outside source, take a look at what is our package, this is what we're looking at capital wise. Let's look at our O&M. Let's look at our rates, see where it is. There's several items in here that if we needed to, we could get loans again from either the state, we could have, such as the AMI, we have DMEC that could help us on some of those financing issues. So we'll look at and do what's best and to, again, have as little impact on our ratepayers as possible.
I do have some questions about the water distribution system, and it goes into the next item on the iron and lead removal. So let's, if you don't mind, let's combine both these topics because one leads into the other.
Chris, may I ask you a question about the water tank, the 1 million gallon water underwater production? You got the 1 million gallon water tank with 250 and 1.2. Should that be factored in differently in light of your planning to borrow money? It's really, you're borrowing $2 million. Your intent is to go after that?
Well, that's the tank in addition to the 2 million for the property, of course.
Okay. So do you need to put that, do you need to reflect that land acquisition in this budget?
No, because we're going to be doing that over a long period of time, as with a bond or something.
Yeah, well, I know that's what the bond's for, but I just didn't know if you'll have debt service associated with that, which is unknown at this time.
Yeah, we'll have to put that into our operating budget, I guess.
Okay.
Darren, when we talked a couple of years ago about removal of iron, I was of the understanding we could do it in 5 years, but more recently learned that was just for major state-owned roads. Is that correct? And this is far more extensive when I look at the map, the maps that were attached to item 9. I see the major ones are covered in your five-year plan. But there are still some others, like I see Cape Henlopen Drive is a major, very old pipe, evidently. And then for Cedar Street, I don't believe your budget includes the cross streets, which all appear to be old iron pipe also.
That's correct.
Shouldn't we be looking at doing that as we go up Cedar Street?
Part of it becomes, I hope Charlie's still in there, is that what I call construction fatigue. I think we're going to be really pushing it to try and get Cedar done in the time frame we have. One of the issues is that we're hitting heavy Pilot Town Road, Cedar, coming back down Kings Highway, and those are all Del Dot roads. You can't touch Del Dot but 7 months out of the year. And these are some pretty heavy duty construction plans. I think I'd love to be able to take a broad brush and take care of everything over off of Cedar and all those side streets. But I think if you were to add that in, I think the community would skin us alive. That's a scientific term for saying they wouldn't like it.
Yeah.
And so I think so if we felt like we could get it all done in one fell swoop, we could try it, but I think that's taken too big a bite.
One of the concerns though is by doing it separately, from a cost efficiency perspective, you've got double mobilization and you're going to be re-tearing up where you're tying into Cedar. I mean, if we put down a nice new road and then we're going to have to cut into it at every side street.
I believe what we're doing is we're getting everything out of Del Dot.
Yes.
So that it then becomes our ability. So right now, between
It's like
Labor Day and Monday, you've got 7 months to work. we're going to be taking and getting everything out and underneath any Del Dot right away. So we don't have to get Del Dot permits. We don't have to do anything else from them. That includes the work we're doing along Pilot Town Road. And that way we now are no longer at their mercy, and we can come in and start doing those side streets. And our contractors will have more time to get in, less hassle. I believe that when we have contracts working in Del Dot roads, we actually get a 20 to 25% increase in cost because they have to deal with Del Dot. So I think those side streets may actually be more economical because it's not a Del Dot road.
Well, I can understand that on Pilot Town, but Cedar, there's a lot of side streets and they're very closely spaced.
Charlie, do you have an opinion?
Well, I mean, it's the board's call, but you know, what you could do with the side streets would be to lump them together and do 5 or 6 at a time in a project to tie over Cedar to Bay Avenue, and then also the side streets going towards the canal. One thing to add, just so you know, is that the water main that we're putting in Cedar Avenue won't be underneath the road. It'll be off the road because the right of way is so wide. And as Darren mentioned, we will be taking the plastic pipe, the PVC pipe. The main will be replaced all the way down Cedar Avenue, but then also at the side streets, we'll take it just beyond the right of way, so we don't have to get permits from Del Dot when we go back to those side streets.
Is the main on the bay side or the canal side that we're putting in?
The bay side.
So, okay, good.
And we'll also be replacing any lead water services or galvanized pipe water services along the way. Now, not all, but a majority of those people are served off the side streets. So the number of services that we're doing on Cedar Avenue is percentage-wise far fewer than the ones that we're doing on Pilot Town Road, for example.
Right. And, okay.
One thing to consider about the mention of fatigue, consumer fatigue, is the same 7 months that you can construct them along a Del Dot road is the same 7 months when there are very few people living on the beach. So
Right.
Your fatigue factor is not going to be as great as it would be on Pilot Town Road.
That's
because
correct.
There's a lot of those little side streets, state named streets particularly, are no one lives there full time off prime season. So your fatigue factor will be much less than it would be if you were doing it over in town.
Yeah, I think we had to think that through a little bit more, Charlie and Darren. I mean, we go ahead and get our permits for Cedar because that's going to be done one way or the other. But I think we ought to think about that because we'll be ripping that up and then coming back and talk about fatigue. We're going to have these side streets going on for a long time, for months or years after that, doing them. We can't do them in the summer either, I mean, practically, from a practical standpoint. So I think we ought to just think about it.
Is one of the alternatives to break Cedar into 2 sections so we could?
It's being done in 2 sections, I think.
Hey, Darren, there's a question for you too.
It's Cedar's being done from the yacht club to the Children's Beach House 1 year, and then Children's Beach House to Savannah.
That's right. I forgot. You're right.
And then there's streets like I see Ship Carpenter and so forth that aren't on the list yet, but seem to have very old pipe in it too. So there's a lot more. I mean, originally we were shooting for a 5-year removal of iron and lead. I don't think you mentioned at the beginning of this talk that maybe we're talking about a 10-year now.
Yes.
To get every stick of it out of there.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've got a question. It says, if the new water main along Cedar and Bay is not located in Del Dot's right of way, will you need to acquire easements? And what happens is it's close enough to, Charlie, it's still going to be in the easement, correct?
Yeah, it's in the right of way of Del Dot. Yes, definitely.
Yes. So it's not in the roadway, but it's still in the Del Dot easement. So yes, we still have to deal with Del Dot.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that there might not be the occasional 1 or 2 easements required to complete the project, but I'm not aware of any right this minute.
If you're installing, a quick question, if you're installing the water main on the bay side of Cedar, aren't you going to have to cut Cedar every time you want to do a side street that goes towards Bay?
Towards Bay or towards
Towards Bay.
Canal?
Toward,
Not
no,
towards.
you said
Well,
that you said the water main was going to be installed on the base on the bay side of Cedar or on the marsh side of Cedar.
the Bay side.
Okay, well that makes a big difference. Okay, thank you.
Well, either way, Mayor, we're going to extend the main pipe to every side road, whether it's on the Bay side or the canal side, to
Okay,
beyond the right of way of Deldot.
or beyond the paved width of the road. Anyway,
Well, outside the right of way, so we don't have to
Okay.
deal with them for permits.
okay, good.
And I guess all the recent cul-de-sac streets, they probably have PVC anyway going under the road to the pipe on the bay side of
Yeah, I
Cedar.
think everyone but one, maybe. I have to look
Okay.
at that.
It
Yeah.
looks like Lewis, maybe iron. All right, that's good. Other questions about the budget? I know we've all had a chance to look at it for a while. Okay,
I can make a motion to approve the budget as presented.
do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Darren.
Thank you.
We're into new business. Item 9, open forum, general discussion of the current long-term effects of the removal of the iron pipe. Well, we've already talked about that, unless you have anything else that you want to add to it, Darren.
I think you covered it perfectly.
Okay. Item 10, open forum, general discussion to allow the Lewis City Art Committee to use the south-facing wall of the DPW's power plant building for a project. I think we have Cliff Diver here to talk about that. Cliff, do you want to turn your camera on if you want?
Yeah, I've been turned off by your screen.
No, you should be able, we can hear you, Cliff.
Yeah, can you turn my picture on?
Is that down in your lower left-hand corner of your screen, Cliff?
There we go.
There we go.
There you go. There you are.
Hi, Cliff.
Hi, everybody. That was really fascinating. Now I remember why I never thought about running for the Board of Public Works.
We had an opening there. We had an opening for a while there.
I tell you, it was, well, I mean, it's pretty, it actually is really fascinating. I thank you for doing that stuff. And Charlie, it's good to see you again. We've gone around a few times. Let me bring up to date. You guys have all received the RPF that we sent out. Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't know how much I need to tell you that you already know, but really briefly, we're a committee charged by the city, and our bylaws ask us to promote the arts and arts education. And we had a really cool project going along the canal, which you may have seen, which was this water tower. It's made out of different color plexiglass, and we lost that because of COVID. The guy couldn't get workers, and he couldn't get into his neighborhood and Brooklyn and everything. So we wanted to try and keep our mojo going, and we came up with this project. I've always looked at that wall on the back of the old power plant and found it pretty interesting wall, especially with the steel on it. And so we made some inquiries and figured out that we could get something up, we could get something going by this fall. And fall's a really good time for bicyclists. It's really on the bike path and not really seeable from the street. But the idea would be we would collect a bunch of, have an open competition, And part of our component is we really want to talk about how we're going to judge these entries. And I had a list of some really good questions from you folks, from somebody in particular.
My name is Robert.
Robert, that was, and they basically were all good questions, which we have talked about internally, and I didn't really give you the full story, so I really want to address those kind of as we're going through. But the idea would be, this was supposed to be for a limit of 18 months. It would take us, you know, from the winter and then a summer and a winter, with the idea that maybe if you liked it, we could do this contest again 18 months from now. And if you don't like it, we certainly wouldn't. The size of the thing will probably be somewhere between 48 feet and 20 feet. And of course, a person can elect to do a smaller one in that same space. They don't have to take up the whole side of the building. And what we were hoping to do by having this open competition is see how many different ideas that we can get and we can look at. Now, the committee decided that if we don't get any good ideas, we're not going to put anything up at all. So it's not like that there's not going to be a lot of judgment and looking at this. However, we do want the judgment to be based on this thing that we're trying to talk about, which is, you know, art is subjective. However, we had this sheet. Did you get this little score sheet too that I sent out? Mm-hmm. The score sheet kind of allows us to evaluate an entry, and here's where it sort of comes into play. That, I mean, of the entire, there's 3 major areas that we're giving points for. The middle one is appropriateness. So the concern of having an inappropriate thing on the wall is totally, you know, shared by the committee. And I would invite anybody from the Board of Public Works to come to these meetings or sit through our meetings while we involve these, while we do this. Our timeline is such that we are, right now people are preparing proposals, and we expect to get proposals. The deadline for proposals is 8/14. So the week between the 8/14 and 8/21, we are planning to review the proposals with as many people as want to help review them. We don't necessarily feel that all the proposals are going to be even brought forth to be reviewed. Probably the idea of narrowing it down to 3 and then having a second meeting in which those 3 are discussed in detail, and we choose a particular you know, one of those 3. We wanted to avoid, we've had public input in the past where someone says, well, if you're going to do a mural, I want to see a nurse with because it's COVID time, or I want to see a swashbuckling pirate picture or stuff like that. We're trying to get away from that kind of detailed asking, because we really would like to see something artistic and something that has sort of the wow factor of a good piece of art. No matter what it looks like, sometimes it'll grab you and can put a smile on your face or make you more interested in something that you see that you're looking at. And that's kind of the idea of this little sheet. So looking for something original and reflecting a theme that the artist will have to defend. The proposal that they have to turn in will have several components to it. And so we're really, you know, this judging it and trying to pick it is a lot of part of what the whole project is about. And we're going to try, we've been coordinating with the newspaper really well so far. We might even throw some pictures in the newspaper. We don't know how many, if any, applications we're going to get. We're offering $5,000 for this. The board of Lewis and Bloom spent $18,000 on their mural, but they rented a lift for somebody for 2 or 3 months, and that's why it was so expensive. And I don't think you have to pay that kind of money for a good mural. But running down your questions, Joe, the safety is always an issue. I would say that we will have an artist there for a couple of days painting his mural. Now, I don't know, we'd like to help. I mean, we're concerned about that too. When we were going to do the city project, the city has a general insurance policy, and we were adding our piece to that insurance policy, so it was covered because it's in the city park and that. So we don't really have, so we don't necessarily, I believe what might be appropriate is if you have any kind of waiver or liability waiver you have for any of your subs, maybe we could get the artist to sign that. And before we go back into the list, there's two components. The RPF goes out, and then after the 17th, we have a contract. So there is a contract that we will sign with the artist, which is like the last note that you have. We've had this one done for the Tom Fruin concert, and we ran it through the city attorney. I'll be glad to send this to you, and we can tweak it to make sure that the BPW is cool with it. We have to change a lot because this is just a painting on the wall. They had a physical object, so the insurance issues were a little different, and they also had to take it down. And that is not really one of our issues. So I'd be glad to run this over to you and let you, but we do need a pretty quick turnaround because we need to be giving it out in about a month. Your second point about access to the public, no, the fence stays, it's seeable by people on the bike path, and no one's inviting anybody in to see it. And the length of the building use, it is 18 months, and that will be in the contract. The piece in the paper was a little vague, and actually, so is my original proposal, which I'm going to tighten up. So I don't, as far as the building goes, it's just pretty much a white wall with paint that's pretty faded, and the idea is that it will be gessoed over and painted, and so it's not, we don't really have any physical thing that's left once the artist leaves. So our timeline is really tight, and I really appreciate you giving us the nod to get started on this, even though we hadn't met yet. And so what can I do to tighten it up for you?
Robert, do you still have any questions? Is that?
No, I'm glad that Mr. Diver was able to go over these general items. I think probably our concern of not only the BPW, but yours as well. At least we've heard from him. I don't have any problem with using the wall of the old power plant as a display for this art. So, and I think we could take Mr. Diver at his on his representations, because most of us know where you live.
Yeah, my guys in the woods.
Mike, did you have any comments?
Yeah, this is Mike Hoffman. My only suggestion, and I think Mr. Diver covered it a lot, and I appreciate that. He did mention a contract with the artists, and that had been reviewed by the city's attorney, and that he would provide that. That would be helpful. If there's any addition, whether it's insurance or other things, just from the BPW's perspective, I'm sure we can incorporate it within that agreement. So the only thing I would suggest is if the board would like to move forward this, just approve with the condition that we execute an agreement acceptable to the BPW to address the concerns addressed. And I think we can do that.
Okay, so it's okay if our committee uses Mike to tighten that up if there's any problems.
Sure, sure.
Okay, good. That helps us.
Okay.
I think it's a wonderful idea. That I go down the bike trail a lot, and that building is an eyesore, and so having a mural in there is very, very, very great idea.
Well, it's a double-edged sword because it's going to be calling a lot of attention to that yard.
Yes, well, that means maybe we have to clean it up a little bit, but I think that wouldn't hurt either. So fine, I'm all for it.
Great. Well, I appreciate it, gentlemen.
All right, do we have a motion on this?
I'll make a motion that we approve it with the condition that the agreement be run through Mike Hoffman for his approval and or any suggestions and so forth. But I don't know what else to put in there.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Cliff, thank you very much.
Oh, thank
Cliff,
you.
take a look at that. Take a look at that big, beautiful water tank that's there, the wooden one.
Yeah.
I love that tank, so I don't know what.
Well, you know, I'll tell you what, we're going to see what kind of response we get. I mean, I think it's really good if the public gets involved, especially if there's some spirited discussion. But we've actually have talked, there's been some talk through the Art and Bloom people because the RB, the Rehoboth Bay people wouldn't mind doing something else on the tower, on the lighthouse going into Lewis.
Yeah.
So how about that for a mural spot?
You know, we ought to really think about it because I'm originally from York, Pennsylvania, and was part of a committee that was on the looking at putting murals all over the town, and it did. And some of these murals are huge and fantastic, and they've really brought a lot of let's say a little extra tourists, I guess, into York, which is what they were for originally, but they really have made a lot of the old buildings look nice.
Well, we're going to see if we priced ourselves out of the market, but we'll get through this one and we'll always be looking for a new project. So thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you, Cliff.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll forward this contract to you, Darren, and you can send it on to Mike.
That'll be perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We're on to item 11, open forum general discussion on the establishment of the DPW stormwater charges. Mayor, I guess you asked us to think about the way we charge our stormwater.
Right.
Everyone's been sent information from the I guess back in 07, I believe, when those charges were first studied
Yeah.
and put into effect. So I guess I'm just looking for input from the board, whether there's any thought about reevaluating that, revisiting that, having another study done, or just what the thoughts are. Anybody have any?
I think this is the first time I saw the UBS report, and it looks like there was a lot of thought put into it in 2008. And I think the main takeaway is the balance between administrative efficiency and ensuring that it's equitable across the board. It doesn't seem to me that for the size of our district and the low fee that we're charging, trying to customize it to individual properties is a cost-effective way of looking at it. And the flat charges spread the cost of keeping stormwater in the entire city and the streets passable and maintaining health and safety across all citizens. So my only concern is that, with the things that we're looking at on the stormwater management side, as we have seen in the capital budget, whether in the long term, our fee structure is really going to be capable of keeping up with MS4 and the other changes like sea level rise and infrastructure improvements that we need. So that's a totally separate question at this point, but I'm not sure we're actually collecting enough money for the future needs.
Well, they noticed that in their, when they approved it. I was reading the discussion, and even back then they didn't think that was adequate. So, and there's much more coming, as you point out. We're just scratching the surface on what I think the state.
We're already looking at flapper valves or non-return valves on some of the storm outfalls, and that's only going to become more of a problem as time goes on. So I personally think the flat fee structure we have is a reasonable approach.
Tom, Robert, any thoughts?
No, I agree, Tom. And I think this is something that should be looked at, certainly in our cost of service study, the next one that's done. But our current rates are basically not even covering our operating expenses at the present time. But I do believe that the fee structure is a correct one. It's administratively easy to administer, and I think people can understand it as opposed to some of the other theoretical ways that you collect for stormwater damage. But certainly if MS4 imposes a lot of future costs on us, our rates are going to have to reflect that.
Yeah. Tom Owen, any comments?
No, I think so too. I agree with what's been said. The more I thought about it, the more I thought we're recently with this monster heavy rain, we've had a number of areas where the stormwater system hasn't been taken care of it. It got jammed, it got over flooded, and it got over, especially over in the Pile New area construction, Mariners Retreat, the back portion there, not the front part. And so I think probably what we're charging isn't enough.
Yeah,
I agree with Robert that if we are going to look at the rate structures in general, we could maybe add this on to it as something to really take a hard look at.
I mean, it's tough because everybody benefits by the drainage system, no matter where you live, even if you live in a condo someplace, because you have to get around and use the roads, and they have to be passable and they have to be maintained. So yeah, I agree. It's not equitable maybe all the way around, but I think it's impossible without going through major hoops to try to fine tune it well enough to make it unique to every user, every property type.
Okay, Press, thank you. And I understand the comments that are being made. I think my question was in terms of the equitability of it, in terms of, and I wasn't thinking that ever there you would be an adjustment based upon individual properties. It was more along the lines of whether it's the lot size. This system is currently based upon water meters. So every property that has a water meter has a stormwater management fee. That's the way this thing was set up. It had nothing to do with the square footage or the size of the building.
Right.
So it seems as though, a property that has 3 water meters is being billed for 3 separate stormwater fees, whereas a larger property that has only 1 water meter is only being billed for 1 stormwater management fee. That certainly is not equitable. And I could give you specific illustrations of that in town. Not necessarily residential, although I think residential does apply, but it also does apply to commercial properties. So there is an inequality here. And I know that like in business licenses for the city, we did not try to specify in terms of the size of the cities of any commercial spaces. We did it on a flat structure of up to 2,500 square feet was 1 fee for a business license. Beyond 2,500 square feet was a larger fee. That might solve the problem of the concern about creating unique structures or unique pricing for individual properties. I'm not advocating that at all. But I do think this is the current system. It's certainly fair. I mean, certainly fairly priced. I'm not suggesting that. But I think you're not capturing the amount of money, the revenues that you could, based on the different sizes of structures that you're charging these fees to.
Well, really, what we're saying though is that it's not dependent upon how big your property is. It's a citywide thing to maintain the entire system, whether you have a small lot or large lot. It's not dependent upon how much goes off your particular property. That's not
In some ways it should be.
And the original idea was per customer. It wasn't for
It was based on water meters, is all it's based on.
It says per customer.
I know, but it's based on what the per customer is based on a water meter. It's, if you have a water meter, you get a stormwater management fee. Has nothing to do with, we didn't determine, there isn't a stormwater customer.
Yeah.
You had to come up with your customer base somewhere, and it was based on those who have individual water meters.
Okay,
And
I
that's
thought-
true. However, you know, trying to base it upon square footage of property introduces another inequitability because some property perks well, some property doesn't. We have areas like in Blockhouse Pond, which are clay. So the idea is to build a rate structure that is as equitable as possible, but is also doesn't add excess administrative cost. And I'm not convinced, and it was discussed in the UBS report about trying to calculate pervious, impervious coverage on a lot, contributed runoff, and it just becomes, especially for as small of a stormwater district as we are, something that would wind up costing net money to all of the ratepayers.
Okay. Well, you and I can disagree on this because I think that there is an inequity here. But the other part of the question that I asked you to investigate, and I don't see it on this agenda, is the fees that are being charged to the city for stormwater management for properties that are basically stormwater management system, part of the stormwater management system, like Canal Front Park and other parks like Mary Bethel's Park, where we're paying a stormwater management fee when in fact the park themselves are helping the stormwater management system. And I didn't see that as part of your question here today.
Well, part of the UBS study talked about the potential for credits and had a very large discussion about the difficulties of how you would calculate them and how you'd make sure they would be equitable. I certainly think certain things, as you point out, Mr. Mayor, the Canal Front Park, maybe that is the exception to the rule, but trying to calculate it in more depth than that. I mean, Canal Front Park is the best management practice for stormwater management, so that's not true of all areas.
Well, I think you certainly, I think that the Zwanadale Park could be, part of that system. I think there are other buildings, not buildings. I've never quibbled over them, buildings, but I do quibble over the Beach One fee. There's no stormwater management there. Is Zwanadale Park, Stango Park. I think those properties are all part of the system. The Little League field. I'm not quibbling over the fire department. Blockhouse Pond. These are properties where you're applying a stormwater management fee when in fact these parks are part of a stormwater management system and they contribute to the ability to manage stormwater.
I don't know, maybe one of the things we could consider is areas that are designated open space not be assessed.
Okay.
Stormwater management.
That would be helpful.
I mean, I think, because that's a zoning district.
It is.
And it does have specific criteria associated with it. And that would get us out of having to calculate, does an area netly contribute or create more stormwater?
It's
Well, if we looked at parks per se, things like that, as opposed to, I mean, I don't want to have us get into open space being someone's backyard is a lot bigger than the other person's backyard, because otherwise we could go nuts with this thing. But we might be able to look at the parks and see if, in fact, it would make any kind of a real difference.
Well, but I'm using the term capital O, capital S, open space, which is a zoning district.
Exactly, not individual property.
Yeah, not whether you have a brick patio or a garden.
Should we look at what that would mean to us? I mean, look at the.
Can I ask, can I add just one little bit?
Sure, go
Fred,
ahead.
can I add one thing?
Sure.
You know, one of the things we've said all along is that the charge is a greater good of the community. In other words, we've got people out there whose house is not right in front of a grate, whose house is not right on a road, but the roads themselves, they've got drainage in the roads that get to the pipe that eventually get there. And really it's to help people get from point A to point B. They get down 2nd Street, they get down Savannah Road, they get down Pilot Town Road. And so that fee, while we can look at the individual property, it helps them because they're able to travel. All of the parks and everything we have in the community, people have to get there. While the beach, it's got the best permeability there is. People have to drive to get there. And it's our system that we maintain that gets them from Route 1 to the beach in safety that we are also paying for. So the greater good to really tie that onto one property, if we open that door, then I've got, you know, the guy that has his 55-gallon barrel on his house, he's going to want his 12 cents of kickback on it. So,
But we're just talking about open space, something city, basically city property.
You're basically talking about that's zoned open space, not individual properties.
Yeah. So it all, we're talking about all just city properties. Is that correct?
Correct.
Why don't we
Well,
take a look at?
actually, we have to be careful there, Ted, isn't, within developed communities, there's an open space requirement, but it's not owned by the city.
In most cases, there's absolutely there's no tax bill. There's no water meter there, so there wouldn't be a stormwater management fee. I can't imagine that any of the open space in any development has a water meter in it.
Yeah,
There's no irrigated systems out there?
I'd have to, you'd have to do a thorough review of it, but I believe most of that is titled to the HOA, not open. It is dedicated open space, but it's not it's not open space that is for public benefit. It's for the HOA itself.
So we're just talking about now maybe just doing it for public open space?
But yes.
If I can try, as I understand the question, it would be for those properties that are zoned open space.
Correct.
You can be zoned residential with open space, but that would be different. It's only the ones that are zoned open space. I would suggest it'd be worth taking a look at identifying what those properties are, but it's easy enough to do. There's a zoning designation for open space. And you
That's
can
right.
those properties.
Well, why don't we look
I
at
just
it?
want to make sure we don't get ourselves crosswise there because,
Yeah, no, I agree. I think what I was thinking about too was still strictly the public zone open space property.
Correct.
So why don't we wait until next month on that particular issue?
Okay.
And take a look at what it really means to us and what kind of revenues we're even talking about. It's probably not
All right.
worth the argument. So let's just do that. Darren, if you could, or Tom, you probably have access to the open space mapping yourself.
mhm.
And just take a look at what that means to us. Then we can discuss it, put it on the agenda for next month. Is that okay with everybody?
Fine. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, item 12, open forum, general discussion of the acceptance of the recommended bid for the wastewater treatment plant drawing bid project. Mr. Gordon.
Presently, member of the board, I've just promoted Charlie up to being the panelist. We have gone out to bid. We have received the bid. And I'm going to recommend that we accept the low bid. Charlie, if you want to take it from there.
Sure. Thank you, Darren. Mr. Lee, board members, we put the project and received bids on July 15th last week. We received 6 bids, so it was a competitive bid situation. from contractors located in Delaware, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, which isn't surprising given it's a wastewater treatment plant project. We do a lot of treatment plant projects with contractors from out of state. The total base bids ranged from $503,100 to $847,000. The lowest total base bid was $503,100 even from Kuhn Construction, and they're located in Hockessin, Delaware. Just a little bit of a summary on the bid amounts. The two lowest bids between Kuhn Construction and M2 Construction out of Landisville, Pennsylvania, were within 1.2% of each other. And in fact, the three lowest bids were within 4% of each other, with George and Lynch being the third lowest bidder. I don't often say this, but we've worked with Kuhn Construction on a number of projects in the past and in the recent past. They're an excellent contractor. They're really grade A contractor. So we have every confidence that they'll get the job done thoroughly and in good working order. So with all that said, we recommend, as Darren mentioned, that the board accept their contract. It's $503,100. If that does happen tonight, we would begin the agreement process with Kuhn Construction and have them working towards starting construction sometime in August.
Okay, any questions for Charlie or Darren? I've worked a lot with Kuhn over the years, and they are great people. So a good contractor.
So is our expectation that the addition of these two beds satisfy our need for drying and dry holing of sludge?
It's going to be a 40% increase in the drying bed capacity. So there'll be 3 beds. Everything still, they are not covered. The cost of covered beds was, I believe, astronomical. It was about almost another $1 million for all of them to be covered. So with that drying bed, I believe we're going to be 40% increase, and we're going to be able to handle everything we're doing currently, plus another probably 200,000 gallons a day.
And Joe, would this help with the odor situation? If you have more beds, they would dry quicker and so forth.
Yes, we can. So you draw with more capacity. You're able to pour thinner. As Paul Paris was talking about, it takes about a 14-day period. If you put less in, that period shrinks. So you could actually do more. So yes, it could help. There's so many variables in that. I'm not going to tell you that this is the magic pill to fix the odor.
It's not the magic, it's not going to stop everybody from having odor problems. Okay.
Yep.
Fine. No, but I understand.
Do I have a motion on this?
I make a motion to accept the low bid from Kuhn Construction for the drying bed expansion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Charlie.
Yes, we'll get started on it.
Okay. All right, call to the public. Any comments from the public? Call to the press. Doesn't look like anything.
Nick is no longer there. If anybody, the question, just so you know, the question earlier that came in, Tim Ritzert is the one that typed it in, used the Q&A, so it was working great. So thank you, Tim, for testing that out for us.
Okay. All right. Okay, I think we'll go into executive session. Darren, could you clear the board?
I will do that. Charlie, thanks again.
Yes, thank you.
We need a motion to go into executive session.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
I move we go into executive session.
Need a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Who made that motion?
I did.
Robert did, I'm sorry.
Who's the second? Who seconded it?
I did.
Okay, I just want to check.